Hey, welcome to Stay Tuned with Mikey and Chad. Today's going to be a good show. We basically going to be talking Colts today, I think. All Colts all day.
Sounds like a lot of Colts talk today.
There's a lot going on, and we have a very special guest today. We have Derek Schultz from ISC Network. How many jobs do you have, actually?
Yeah, I think I have to ask my wife to remind me again. ISC Sports Network is my full-time job, and that's a little more behind the scenes, but I think if you're a Colts fan, you probably know the name Greg Rakestraw. He does the pre- and post-game shows.
Yep.
ISC's, he's involved with that. He's the vice president of the network, so I came aboard back in December. But I do a podcast with D&D Star called the Schultz Star Show Podcast, which is a total joke. The title, that is. The podcast itself, I hope, is legitimate. And then I write a little bit for Indianapolis Monthly. So I've got I've got a couple of irons in the fire, I guess you would say, just trying desperately to cling on to whatever fading relevance I still have in the city.
Well, I was going to say, so when your show originally went off the air, Query and Schultz, did you realize how much of an impact you had on the Indianapolis Sports Network? Because there was a huge uproar when that show went off the air. Did you realize how big that was?
Yeah, first, it's nice of you to say that. It was a huge impact. No, Jake kind of put it well, where he had been through it a bunch of times before. I'd never been laid off before.
Yeah.
And he said it's kind of like attending your own funeral, where people don't say stuff like that to you until it's over.
Right.
And so it was nice. I did take solace in the fact that people had nice things to say. I also took solace in the fact that a lot of times in this business, particularly in radio, you get kicked off because somebody tells you, hey, you suck, leave.
Right,
and
yeah.
This was far more of a, hey, we're cutting 1,000 jobs nationwide. We're cutting 10 jobs in your cluster.
Yeah.
I mean, we lost it over the course of 2020. We had 10 on-air people at iHeart in Indy. 9 of us lost our jobs. 5 of us in the first wave, and then 4 more in the second wave, which came in the fall. So, it was kind of one of those things where it was a great run. 8.5 years. It changed my life, and
yeah.
It was a lot of fun. And I'm glad, because it's this little AM radio station, right? And they're where I thought to myself, my God, like, no one's actually listening to this shit, right? and it turned out that, yeah, there were people that listened or that cared. And I think what they saw about it, more than sports, because, sports are sports, whatever. Lots of people can talk sports. I think what people appreciated about the show was that we did genuinely care about the city and the people in it. And
right.
We tried to portray that every single day. And, Jake, with his philanthropic work, far more of an impact than what I've made personally. But, both of us were real conscious about that. So that it was nice. I mean, it sucks to get fired. Don't get me wrong, and laid off. Like, that's supposed to help you feel better about it. But
right. Either way, you're out of a job. Who cares,
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, but it was cool. And from athletes, too, I think Mario Andretti signed our petition, which
that's awesome, man. Oh, my God.
Stuff like that. We had a couple of former Colts reach out to us, too, privately, because we did the Reggie Wayne show
right.
for 3 years, and Robert Mathis, and we had good connections with a lot of those guys. So it was nice. It did cushion the fall a little bit, if you will.
Sure. That's it. Yeah, and speaking of the Colts, so big news today, obviously, Darius Leonard got the huge deal, $99.5 million man, over 5 years. Good for the Colts.
Good in the sense that this is what you want to do. You want to, and to a lesser extent, the Pacers feel this way too. You want to draft well and then protect your own. You know what I mean? And keep those guys. So this whole wave from this unbelievable draft class with Quentin Nelson and Braden Smith and Darius Leonard, it makes sense that you want those guys to be long-term mainstays. Now, we can have a discussion on whether you should pay an inside linebacker $100 million.
Right.
Not exactly an impact position as much as, a pass rusher, a quarterback, something like that.
Yeah.
But given who Leonard's been really from the get-go, he was an impact player day one.
Yeah.
And you don't see that often. And I also love it from his path, because no offense to the guys that play at like Alabama or Clemson, like that, but for him to come from where he came from and now essentially get to call himself a $100 million man and, an all-pro and a multiple-time Pro Bowler, it's been a pretty incredible path for Darius Leonard.
Yeah, and I saw Zach Kiefer from The Athletic tweeted earlier that through 2023, the Colts have Leonard, Braden Smith, Ryan Kelly, Carson Wentz, Grover Stewart, Kenny Moore, Jonathan Taylor, Pittman, Blackman, Kwity Paye, and then you had Buckner onto that list. So there's a lot of guys that are going to be around, hopefully around for quite a while with this team.
Yeah, which is great. But, like I said, and I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer about that. It's great that they have a core lot because, hell, you go back 5 years ago, they had no one.
Right.
They had no young talent at all.
Yeah.
And they were, transitioning out of the, I guess, Grigson, but also the Pagano era, and then into now. And now you have this great young talent to build around, but you need a left tackle. You need a lights-out edge player,
right.
Not just a guy that occasionally flashes.
Yeah.
You need wide receiver as well. Yeah, I'm bullish on Michael Pittman, like a lot of people are, but they need somebody that's going to be elite at that position to help out Carson Wentz and presumably Carson Wentz and be a great pass catcher for them. So I think what they lack right now is not talent, but they lack the dynamic playmakers that the great Colts teams had with Edgerrin James, Reggie Wayne, people like the Marvin Harrison, Peyton Manning, it goes without saying.
Right.
That's kind of the next, I think, hurdle for them to cross. Like, it's great to have a really great center. It's great to have a really great slot corner, but you need guys that are great players at the impact positions as well.
Yeah.
You've brought up the impact position players, the edge rushers, kind of like that. Is Kwity Paye, is he someone that could be that impact player on the edge?
Yeah, I think so. He was considered by many people to be the best edge prospect in the draft, and this may not have been a great edge class, but still, anytime you're the number one guy or considered to be the number one guy in the draft, that's a pretty high compliment. Comes from obviously a great program at Michigan, even though they did not have a great couple of years.
Yeah, exactly.
And there are some concerns, I think, about maybe what his true upside is going to be, but they just need somebody. I'm not even saying that they need Kwity Paye to be like the next Mathis or Freeney, but if Kwity Paye could be,
as long as he's not the next Bjorn Werner, we'll be all right.
Yeah, as long as he's not that, sure. I'm trying to think in an example of, like the Colts have had some guys that have been just really good,
just
solid,
a solid
Rager and
right,
people like that have been just good, solid players. And I'm hopeful that Kwity Paye's ceiling is a little bit higher than Monte Rager, but somebody kind of along those lines that churns out 10 to 12 sacks a year and is a borderline Pro Bowl player. If they could just get somebody consistently to do that, I think it would help because the defense is good around it. You know what I mean? You don't need necessarily a world beater at edge, but you need somebody that opposing offenses have to really prepare for, and the Colts just don't seem to really have that right now unless, Teray shows it. God, they've been talking about Banigou. He can play. Well, at some point,
they've been saying that for so long. Yeah.
Outside of just being in shorts.
Well, yeah, when's he going to actually be on the field to show it is the problem that we're running into with him.
Yeah.
Have you been to any of the training camp sessions?
No. My work/toddler schedule isn't super conducive to attending training camp, so I've been kind of like a lot of other people. I've watched from afar, and Zach or Jim Aiello or anybody else the stuff that they put out, that's what I kind of digest every day.
So I've been seeing great highlights from Michael Strawn. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
I know he's not going to be a number 2 receiver, probably not even a number 3 receiver, but he looks like he's showing flashes of a guy that could be a game changer. He's a big guy. Catch, we all saw the one-handed catch he was making. It seems like we need receivers badly, and he seems like he'd fit in really well.
Yeah, and a small school guy as well, which is, they had, it's crazy to think that this was 10 plus years ago now, but I remember back in the day they had a late round pick named Pierre Garçon, and everybody's like, wait,
who is this guy? Right, yeah. He's got the little thing on it.
Yeah, he's got on there, and he was rawer than raw, right?
Yeah.
But once he clicked, he had a really, all things considered, he had a great NFL career. He came from a great program in Mount Union and all of that, but still, we're talking like low-level college football. I hope so. I mean, I really hope he hits because the Colts have had a little bit of an MO of having these guys who look great in Westfield, and then they get on the field, and you're like, what happened?
Yeah.
Deron Carter, Deion Kane.
Yeah.
You go back to I remember Roy Hall. This is another kind of deep cut who played at Ohio
Oh
State.
yeah, I remember him. Oh God, I
You
forgot.
saw him in training camp, and you're like, oh my God,
I
who
forgot
is
all
this
about
guy?
him.
He looked like an Adonis.
Yeah.
And he couldn't play dead. So.
Yeah. I think we were.
Hopefully they're going to be able to find it, because you're right. They need playmakers, because as good as T.Y. Hilton has been, it seems that he's going to be on the downside.
He's on his way out. We all know that, and it's unfortunate, but it happens to every player. But I think we were so lucky for so many years. Speaking of the Hall of Fame inductees from the other day, I mean, obviously Peyton, Edge, Marvin. We go from Marvin from Marvin to Reggie to T.Y. I mean, we've always had that number one receiver in our core, and an elite receiver, and we're kind of at a point where T.Y. is on the downslide, and we're trying to bring in new guys, and Pittman could be that next guy. I'm hopeful about him. It seems like he's doing all right in camp though this year.
Yeah, it sounds like he's had a good camp, and what I like about him is that I think there's a foundation that's already there that at the very least, Michael Pittman's going to be a really good receiver.
Yeah.
With the potential to still be great. But, again, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Kwity Paye. As long as, the Colts kind of, I think, issue has been they've been sort of, missing on some of those positions.
Yeah.
And or the guys that they've taken, it's just been kind of bad luck. I hate to call Paris Campbell a miss because the jury's still out, but then you look around at what DJ Metcalf or AJ Brown
yeah, right, exactly.
are doing, and already they're elite level top 10 NFL wide receivers.
Exactly.
And Paris Campbell played 9 games, so
I mean, you can only
happen.
Yeah, you can only give them so much time before you say, all right, this guy was a bust. Give 2-3 years, and that's where I was going to go to next. Jacob Eason, is this his time to shine? Because I've heard he's had good days and bad days in camp. I've also heard Ellinger's had good days and bad days. I mean, who's going to be the starting quarterback week 1?
I still think it's going to be Eason, but it sort of sucks because it sounds like if you were to combine all the positive traits that Ellinger brings to the table and that Eason brings to the table, you'd have a really good quarterback.
Yeah.
Because Eason has the body and the arm
right.
and the look, and Ellinger's got everything else.
Yeah.
But he's got the arm.
He's got all those intangibles that you want Eason to have. But
he doesn't have the laser rocket cannon arm that Eason has. So
right.
I still think it's going to be obviously with the caveat that Carson Wentz isn't available, because I know that they're saying positive things availability. I can't imagine that he's going to be under center week 1.
Oh no.
Maybe it's my Andrew Luck PTSD. I'm not sure, but
God,
I don't think so.
We still have nightmares from that from the whole Andrew Luck saga. God, it was, and it's funny because people still talk about him coming back. He's not coming back. The dude is gone. I mean,
I think they gave that one last Hail Mary last year where they really did sat down and they talked. Remember that cryptic
the tweet from the girl to his wife? Yeah.
Somebody's wife who knew Andrew's wife or something.
Yeah, and he's going to see Jimmy tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that was.
And everybody got all excited. So I do, and I did hear from somebody that would know that they did talk, but. So
it wasn't total bullshit. I thought it was total bullshit.
No, I don't know. That text message or whatever might have been total BS. But
yeah.
I was told that they did talk, and that Luck basically communicated again. Hey, it's over for me.
Yeah.
So I think that's where he is, and I think we all kind of knew. Given he's kind of a different dude, unlike Peyton or somebody like that, he doesn't need it.
Right.
So I'm not surprised that
he's got so many strange other interests, and he's like you say, he's a different guy, and he doesn't necessarily need football in his life. He's like, I'm gonna go read books and do this kind of. I mean, he's so odd. I mean, he's such a great player, but he's so different than most quarterbacks you come across in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think what sucked about that too was 2018 was really a lot of fun after a lot of really not fun years, and they started I think 1-4 and just went on that
great
run and nearly won the division, and then got in as a wild card, and they just absolutely destroyed Houston in the wild card round, and then obviously they ran into Kansas City, who ended up going deep and could have very easily won the Super Bowl had they won that freaking coin toss in the AFC Championship game. I think that made it sting more. It was almost like if he would have retired after missing the season in 2017, then maybe he'd be like, yeah, you know what, I get it, I can live with it. But it just felt like the franchise's trajectory was rising when he was leaving, and I think that left even more of a sting for fans.
Yeah, it did. And also the other one was, in the past week, Philip Rivers has been talking about coming back. I mean, I don't think I wouldn't be mad if he came back to the Colts, but I wouldn't see that happening either.
No, and it doesn't sound like that would necessarily be the fit, because he made it sound like he wanted to come back in December. I would have to assume, hopefully, that Carson Wentz is healthy by then.
Yeah.
And he wants to play for a contender, which, I'm not going to say that I'm like uber pessimistic about the Colts. Like I'm excited about the season like everybody else. I think we need to pump the brakes a little bit on, Super Bowl roster. I don't know that yet. I'm not confident that they're there. I think I'm confident that they could get to the playoffs and win a game and take another step than what they did last year. But I don't see them quite stacking up with some of the elites, particularly in what's now a totally loaded AFC.
Man, I'm telling you, the AFC, even the AFC South, which we, for so many years, we had it locked up. It was a no-brainer. We were winning the AFC South every year. And now, the Titans are an elite team. Jaguars could possibly be. I mean, I don't know what he's going to do there, but what Trevor Lawrence is going to do in Jacksonville. But it could definitely be a solid. We were the laughing. Well, I guess the division was the laughing stock of the NFL for many, many years, and we had it pretty easy. But it's and the AFC in general is just a really tough conference now. And like last year, it took 11 wins to even get into the playoffs. I mean, that's unheard of.
They had 11 and fell out, and they were SOL. Yeah. So you'd have to assume. I think you'd have to assume, and now you've got the extra game. But 11-6, I think, bare minimum is what it's going to take. I think to get in the AFC. Or I shouldn't say bare minimum. 11-6, you'd feel really good. I think about where you are.
Well, I would have thought that 11-5 was you'd feel really good last year.
That's a good point. That's a good point. But yeah, it's a bear, and the division changing. I mean, this stuff goes in cycles, but
yeah.
Those years with, and I don't want to take away from all those guys. I mean, I think the 2014 team especially was a good football team, a solid one. 2012 was kind of a fluke, and that was a shock.
Right.
2013 was a flawed team, but I do think 2014 was good. But I don't think any of those three teams, which all finished 11-5, were as good as their record was. Because if you really look at it, those records, those years, were built on dunking on a terrible division. I think they won 16-2 against the AFC South in those years.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Which if you're 16-2, I think they were 500 basically against everybody else.
Yeah. That
they played in those years, and you had I think in 14, Tennessee and Jacksonville were the two worst teams in the league.
Yeah.
So half of the division was teams 31 and 32, and you can't. And they had this long run of dominance against the Titans where they were 24-4 against them over a stretch. They had never lost to Houston at home, and then they lost to, I think, Brandon Weeden and Brock Osweiler.
I remember that. I remember
that. Yeah, it sucked. It sucked to see that dominance go away. And it's actually pretty shocking that they haven't won the division since 2014.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a long way to go.
It is. And the funny thing is, if you look back at last year, if they would have won that first game against Jacksonville, they would have been in a much different spot at the end of the year than what they ended up at. And who knows? They could have won. They could have at least won a playoff game, possibly. I mean, I don't think they could have beaten the Chiefs, but who knows? And it's I was wondering about. They've got this huge timeline on Wentz right now. Is it still 5 to 12 weeks?
Supposedly, yeah.
Is that still where they're at? Because that could either mean he'll be gone for maybe a week or two, or halfway through the season. I mean, that's a huge gap between
As with most things, I think generally you kind of look at the middle, and the middle would put it at like week 3 for a return. And I guess that's still where maybe the smart money would be if you were betting. But the problem is that, again, we just kind of talked about it with luck, and it's a completely unrelated situation. But just given the Colts' injury luck, you just always assume the worst. You can't help it. You can't help but be pessimistic when those timelines happen, because it feels like this stuff always ends up getting moved back. But what I really worry about with Wentz is, one, it's a foot injury, and he's a guy that relies on his mobility, but also this is a guy that's tried to basically remake and tear down and start over his footwork all over again.
Yeah.
Because that was the big problem with him in Philly. I mean, he was a disaster last year. I don't care what anybody says about what was around him. Like that was not a talented team. Carson Wentz was bad.
Yep.
Even with bad players around him, he was bad.
Yep.
And the Colts need him to tap into not necessarily 2017, but if they can get the 2018-19 version, I think this roster is good enough where they're going to be in the playoffs and in good shape to potentially make a run.
Has the Nick Foles conversation died down?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know. Given the dynamic, I get the connection between Foles and Reich, but given the dynamic between Wentz and Foles and kind of where the Colts are, trying to turn the page with Carson Wentz and, hey, new team, and we believe in you, and this is different than Philadelphia. What kind of message would it send to then bring in Foles? Yeah, people could say, well, it's a business. They got to win football games, and Wentz has got to get over it. Yeah, but you do have to handle these things with some tact.
I think they really screwed with him mentally when Foles took over.
Yeah.
And so
yeah, it did. And just in general, signing a veteran quarterback like Blake Bortles, or you trade for Gardner Minshew, like what does that really do?
No, I mean, yeah, no.
If Wentz is out for the year, and God forbid, but let's just say Wentz is out for the year, that essentially getting in Minshew or Foles, or one of those guys, that turns a 4-13 season into a 7-10 season. Right.
You're still out of the playoffs. You're still at the bottom of the barrel. I mean, it doesn't really matter. But
who cares? It's like those years with Brissett, like when they went 7-9. I mean, I know it's in the moment you don't wish for this, but you would just rather have gone 3-13, 7-9.
Got get a good draft pick and be. Yeah. That's what always drives me crazy about the Pacers. Starting to get off topic, but they're always right in the middle of the pack and always get that just 15 through 17 whatever draft pick that we never hear about again. But and that's kind of where the Colts have been for a while. It's like either you have to really suck, or you have to be a really good team that an elite player wants to come to. And
be good or be bad.
We're never either of those, which is lately, anyways, I should say. And another thing, I was so happy to see Edge get inducted yesterday. That was such a great feeling for me. I mean, Peyton as well. Obviously, we all knew that was going to happen, but I mean, I feel like Edge just he was that guy when he came here. Like he said, the gold teeth and the dreads and everything. I felt so happy that he was able to be in the Hall of Fame, get the gold jacket, get the bust. I mean, I'm really happy for him.
Yeah, you kind of said it, Mike, where no offense against Peyton, I was happy for Peyton too. But it was a foregone conclusion always that Peyton Manning was going to get inducted. Whereas you didn't know with Edge, because I think a lot of people unfairly thought of him as being propped up by Manning, and I think it's ridiculous. I mean, frankly, he's overqualified for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
If not for the knee injury, I think we're talking about a guy that was going to end up as being one of the 3 or 4 greatest running backs in history. I really do feel that way. And knee injury, he had 2 1,500-plus yard seasons. So, his numbers and his ability to do everything at an elite level, run, catch, block, he really is one of the greatest all-around backs ever. And I'm glad that he finally got his just due, because I thought it was really, there are lots of guys that played with, Thurman Thomas played with great players. That doesn't diminish how great. Emmitt Smith played with great players.
Right.
I've never really felt like you're a product. Were they helped by that? Was Reggie Wayne helped by playing with Marvin Harrison? Yeah, but you throw Reggie Wayne on any team, and he would have been a great wide receiver. So I was glad for Edge to see that nod because I was worried that it wasn't going to happen for him.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that he broke through.
Yeah, I was too. That's funny that you say people could be basically a product of their system that they're around and be. Because I always thought Tom Brady. Sorry to go way off topic. I always thought Tom Brady was a product of the Belichick system, and the dude goes to Tampa Bay and wins the Super Bowl. I mean, I've as a Colts fan, I've always hated him, but I don't hate his work ethic. I don't hate how he is as a player, but a guy like that can go anywhere probably and win. He could probably go to the Niners right now and take them deep in the playoffs. He could go wherever he wants to. And at like 40, how old is he? Like 40 something?
Yeah.
I mean,
I get that people here are nauseated by it, but you know what I kind of miss about Brady, before this recent run, people forget that from 2005 to 2014, so you're talking about basically a 10-season span, they didn't win any Super Bowls.
You're right.
And if you really look at it, starting in 2007 when he was paired with Moss, and that was his first MVP season, Tom Brady was a much, much better quarterback from 2007 through 2013 than he ever was from 2001 through 2006.
Yeah.
And yet, everybody wanted to make it about the rings. And, I miss kind of having that argument where I'd always say, look, you can't just make it about rings because look how great Brady has been, and you need some luck and circumstance to happen. And then, the Patriots they were knocked out by the Jets one of those years.
Yeah.
They weren't having a lot of good luck, and now it feels like all of it comes back because Edelman makes this stupid catch.
You're right, yeah.
Everything kind of breaks their way.
I feel like he had so much luck in some of those years. I mean, it was
I appreciate. I'm still not. And people are going to be like, "Well, Schultz, you're from you're in Indianapolis, so of course you're going to." I don't hate Brady at all.
I don't either. I
grew up out there, and my best friend, huge Patriots fan. My father-in-law and brother-in-law were Patriots season ticket holders, and still huge Patriots fans out in Vermont, and so I kind of get it from other sides too. Yeah. I appreciate him as the way he's going to end up being the greatest champion in NFL history, but I still kind of hesitate at greatest player because you need a lot of help. Certainly, you can make that argument for Brady. I'm not saying that you can't, but people act like, well, no, it's the argument's over. Well, no, it's not over.
No.
There's always an argument against that.
Right, and I totally understand what you're saying because you put it the best. He could be the best champion ever, but as far as skills, intangibles, everything, is he? No. I mean, I would say probably not. But anyway, I want to stop talking about Tom Brady. I don't even know why I'm talking about him because I actually want to talk about go back to the Colts. DeForest Buckner had the injury that is of no concern yesterday. Should we be concerned or should we not be concerned? I mean, it was very vague.
Yeah, I mean, you're always concerned, especially when it's another foot injury, because then you're like, what the hell's going on? I mean, I'm not going to panic until they give me reason to panic.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard anything else from it. I mean, I'm not as tapped in. Now that I'm not in it every day, I don't obsess over calling people, hey, what's happening here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not as much in it, so I'm probably the wrong person to ask, do your sources back then? I haven't talked to anybody about Buckner or anything like that.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, I think you're always concerned because this has it's been one of the most injured teams for years, and the numbers back that up. Football Outsiders has something called AGL, which is adjusted games lost, and if you go back to the later Peyton years, so like 09, 10 on to now over the last, so it's about a dozen seasons, the Colts are, consistently ranked 28th, 30th, 31st, 32nd in the league in adjusted games lost, which is games lost by key players, not practice squad guys or reserves, but frontline players.
We know. We're very aware of that.
Yeah, I mean, I know all fans don't, but you finally have that number to back it up. You know what I mean? It's easy to just throw something out there. Well, the Colts are one of the most injured teams. Well, prove it. Well, you can now.
Yeah, exactly.
That's certainly been a point of frustration. But man, he's such a I really didn't know. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that I watched a ton of Niners games, but I had no idea how much he really impacted games on the interior of that defensive line. That dude is an absolute monster.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way you are. I knew the name, obviously, but I hadn't watched many Niners games like you, but I knew the name, and I knew he was a game changer. And I said, oh hell, now we've got somebody. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to do this year. What are your expectations for the Colts this year as a whole? I mean, are we going to actually win a playoff game? Are we going out in the first round again? What's going to happen?
I mean, that should be the bar. But I think I kind of view this similarly to last year, even though some of the names and faces have changed, particularly at quarterback. I think it all depends on who Carson Wentz is, because if Wentz is
last year's Carson,
or if he's anything close to that, then the Colts have no chance. It doesn't matter how good the roster is, or if he's hurt and unavailable, then they're in real trouble. But I would hope. My sincere expectation is that they get back to the playoffs and win a game, but that's how I view them. I think this is a divisional round. Hopefully, they're competitive. Sort of game, or just get to the divisional round and see how things go. I'm assuming that's going to be a road game, because I think Tennessee is still the odds-on favorite to win the division. That's kind of where my expectations are. I know that's a really boring answer, because most people either say, well, they're going to the Super Bowl, or they're going to be terrible. You know what I mean? And
I have no thoughts of them making the Super Bowl. I mean, it'd be great if they win the Super Bowl, but it's not going to happen. But do you think they have a chance to actually win the division against the Titans? I think the Titans are probably the favorite to win the division, like you said. But do they have a chance to win the division against the Titans?
Yes. Yeah, I do. I definitely think that.
Even with the Titans' new acquisitions and everything?
Yeah, they've had to kind of remake themselves defensively, especially. But, I don't think that there's some necessarily like a juggernaut or anything like that. I think they're good with the potential to be really good. But I think in a lot of ways they're sort of similar to the Colts. Like, I don't view Tennessee as a Super Bowl team either.
I know.
So that's kind of where I would put them in kind of the next category. But yeah, I think the division is gettable. I think what's really to see, and people can talk about Derek Henry all they want. I mean, he's running over guys and he's the highlight guy.
He is ridiculous.
Tennessee is Tannehill.
Yeah.
And he's played. You can say what you want about him, because we have these preconceived notions of who Ryan Tannehill is, but he's played like a top 5 or 6 quarterback the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And I didn't believe it last year. I mean, the sample size was like 10
It seemed like a fluke. It seemed like a total fluke. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, this is Bortles and the Jaguars in 2017, getting a quarter away from the Super Bowl. Like, this is just a massive fluke. And they backed it up last year. It's just that defensively they couldn't stop anybody, so that's what ultimately shortchanged their season.
Well, speaking of, you talk about Derrick Henry. When we talk about the Colts running game, we have 3 really solid backs right now. What do you think the division is going to be between Mack, Taylor, and Hines on a game-by-game basis? I mean, is Frank just going to go off the hip? One game, if you're hot, Hines might get 15, 20 carries or catches. Taylor might get 15 or 20. Mack might get a couple. I mean, how are they going to break this up?
I mean, I think Reich does it by feel, but I think Taylor is going to be so good that he's going to have to be the bell cow, and you're going to be feeling Jonathan Taylor a lot, because I don't think the Colts have really had somebody like that at running back. They'll probably have to go back to edge, because they've had some solid. I mean, Joe Adai was a good, in retrospect, people I think underappreciate.
He wasn't bad. Oh yeah, he was serviceable.
Yeah, so they've had a handful of okay ones. I
think
over the years that even Marlon Mack 2 years ago was a very good back.
Yeah.
But I think Taylor has the chance to be an elite one.
I think he's special.
I'm interested to see the usage, because I really didn't like how they would run Hines up the middle between the tackles on 3rd and short. And I think they did that because they wanted to keep defenses on their toes. But the problem is defenses saw that and they were like, okay, we're just going to stuff the hell out of this.
Right, yeah.
And keeping them on their toes because it's an easy thing. You need to get Hines in space.
Exactly. That's not his game. His game is either getting him out to the edge or, throwing the little short pass to him, the little 3-yard pass, and him using his speed and getting you 7, 8, 9, 10 yards. that's his game. His game is not running up the middle. He's not a bruiser by any means. But I think Taylor kind of has that. He can run, he can catch, and he can. He's got some power. So for me, he seems like he's going to be, hopefully for a few years, going to be that RB1 that we've needed for a long time.
Yeah, it's his season last year was really odd. Where about halfway through, I was like, he's just not ready. Like he's not ready to do this. Mm-hmm. And then it's like once the light switch,
he kept going.
The light bulb went on. I mean, my God, it just clicked. I mean, the Baltimore game, they had to bench him. He was so bad.
I know.
It felt like immediately after that, he really kind of hit the ground running. So I'm really excited. I'm excited to see what Mac does, coming back. And I'm glad that he's back because he's been a great teammate and he's a really talented guy and a good dude. But yeah, I mean, I don't know everyone's 1 through 3 of the other 31 teams in the league, but I can't imagine there's a better one pound for pound than what the Colts have.
Yeah, see that's what I was kind of wondering in the offseason. I didn't know if they'd use maybe Mac for trade bait. It seemed like a good idea to me. No one else talked about it, but it seemed like Mac has kind of proved himself 2 years ago, and he obviously got injured last year, but everyone kind of knew what he had, and I thought we could use him for something. And then we've got Hines and Taylor left over, as the 1-2 punch. But I don't know if that's still an option for them.
Well, he was under contract, and although it's really hard to trade somebody coming off injury, and the Colts don't really do business like that where you'd re-sign him and then just deal him.
Yeah.
So I think there were a couple of things that probably went into that, but if somebody else really wanted Marlon Mack, he signed a real reasonable deal to come back to the Colts. Somebody very easily could have paid that, and I think there was some apprehension. A, coming off the injury, and B, running back is a fungible position for the most part.
Yeah.
You don't really need to. You certainly don't need to overpay for it. Maybe you do for the elite of the elite, but for the most part, that's something where you just
right.
If Taylor's just very good for 3 years, then you just let him walk at the end of it, and you bring somebody else in.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking. I mean, it's one of those strange positions that you're not. For some reason, they get beat up the most, and they don't get paid top dollar, which is very odd to me. But anyways, man, I think we're gonna wrap it up. I've talked enough Colts for today, and I've gotten all the answers that I need to get. I really appreciate you joining, man.
Yeah, no, and thanks for the invite. I'm glad you could do this because I'm not as big of a baseball fan anymore, but I saw what happened to the Brewers last night, and oh my God. Like, what even was that?
See, that's true. I know. I'm watching the game right now on the TV above me. I know.
Did he just lose it in the lights or something?
I don't know what happened.
I was going to fall over. I was like, well, that's the final out of the game, and then ultimately they lost in extras.
I know. It's all right. I think they're losing right now. Damn it. But anyways, yeah, man, definitely. If you'd love to come on again, I'd love to have you on. I know you're wealth. We didn't even get into the Pacers or anything else around Indy, but yeah, it was good having you on, man.
Yeah, happy to do it. If you want to talk in season or whatever else, you know how to get me. So
sure, man.
Appreciate it. I'm always happy to come on.
All right, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Have a good one.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Bye. All right, that was Derek Schultz, and I don't know where Chad went. I think Chad went to the bathroom. But anyway, we're going to wrap this up. I hope you guys had fun, and we'll talk to you next time. See ya.